Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel once again, and today we're going to be running over the current 2024 polling for each state. Now we're going to be breaking down, going to each swing state, seeing which states are leaning more to the Republicans or the Democrat side. Now Kamala Harris is supposed to pick her VP anytime soon, but again, I really don't think the VP will even matter to her when it comes to the ballot. Maybe in Pennsylvania, if she picks Josh Shapiro, it could matter if there, maybe in Arizona, if she picks Mark Kelly, but as you can see, with Trump even picking Vance, it really didn't even bother to help out in any really swing states, maybe a little in the Rust Belt, but as you can see with the current polling right now, it really hasn't shown any improvement. So I personally don't think the VP will matter. Now, if we start off with Trump's safe states, these are going to be the states that Trump has won both times in 2016. He won them in, like I said, 2016 and in 2020 by good margins, more than 10 points. As you can see, these are going to be his safe states. He is going to start off with a 126 electoral votes. And I am going to go ahead and fill in Texas, Florida, Ohio, and Iowa just because, again, he won them both times in his last two elections by decent margins. The polling usually underestimates Donald Trump in the states. But again, as you can see with the current polling, he's over 10 points in each state. So I think these will become safe states for Donald Trump this year. And same thing for Kamala Harris. These are going to be her swing states. Now, I did see an interesting poll come out of Oregon that wasn't making Oregon a safe state anymore, so we're going to have to go over that. But these are going to be the states that Kamala Harris won, or that the Democrats won in 2020 and in 2016 and farther down the line. And I just see no possible way that even Trump's not going to pick off these states this year. I think they're too far to the left, and I don't see any possible way he will win these states. Now, as you can see, she starts off with a 183 versus Trump's 219. And all you have to do is get to 270 to win the election. So we're going to be breaking down each state and seeing where it is at the moment. Now, I know I usually start out west, but we're going to start up the East Coast today. We're going to start with New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, you can tell that this poll did usually show Trump at the beginning. He was leaning by one or two, but as Harris has become the nominee and farther less secure in her votes, you can see that the polling is starting to shift her way, making her have a 6 and 5 point lead in the state. Donald Trump did come close to winning the state in 2016, but at the moment it shows Harris winning New Hampshire as a likely for the Democrats. And if we come down to Pennsylvania with 19 electoral votes, this state is very interesting because, again, I personally don't believe VPs matter, but if she picks Josh Shapiro, it possibly could switch the state back to her way. Now, I know the polling does show Harris at the moment with the average lead up by one, but that's going back and forth. You can see back in August 1st, Harris was only up by 0.1 of a point, and now she is starting to gain a little bit of a lead, but that's just due to the recent polling coming out. You can see these polls show that she's tied, have a few Harris poll that's leading, but the majority of them still show Trump is up by anywhere from 1 to 4 points. And again, I don't personally believe that her VP choice will matter, but as you can see, Trump does have the majority of the polls. He has just a few more, and a lot of them are tied. So I definitely think the Republicans will tilt Pennsylvania to Trump in this election. Come down to Virginia with 13 electoral votes. This state is going to be, in my opinion, one of the closest swing states this yet. This state has been trending a little bit to the right after its two elections where it went to the left by pretty decent margins. You can see in the most recent poll, it does show Donald Trump up by 4 points. Now, Harris did at the beginning had the lead, but Donald Trump is starting to make a push in this state with the most recent poll by Emerson College and Florida Atlantic University, showing Donald Trump up anywhere from 2 to 4 points. So I definitely think this state might not even go likely or tilt margin like Pennsylvania. At the moment, the polls are showing it more of a lean for Donald Trump to win. Now, North Carolina, this isn't a very important state for Donald Trump. I do have my own personal opinions on this state. You know, Harris is starting to grow in this state. The polls suggest that. But after Donald Trump won this state in 2016 and in 2020, I definitely think he has probably a 90% chance of winning this state in North Carolina. The Democrats are going to try to push and make a push into this state, but I definitely think even with the most recent poll, you can see Harris is not even have a poll where she is in the lead. Even in the sponsored Democrat poll, she is down by 4 points. Now, based off the previous election, I definitely think this state will go more of a lean likely scenario for Donald Trump. And if we come down to Georgia, this is a big critical battleground state. I personally believe whoever wins Georgia probably has about a 90% chance of winning the election. Georgia is very important, even though it has 16 electoral votes. It's not the biggest state. For some reason, it is starting to be a very critical battleground state. You can see Donald Trump is up by almost a point after he lost in 2020 by nearly even less than a point. I think it was by 0.3 of a point. You can see in the most recent poll, it does show Donald Trump up by 2. Now, even with the Democratic poll showing Harris is up by 1, they are again starting to make a push in the state. But as you can see by the most recent polls, Donald Trump is up in the state, and I think it will go just like North Carolina, anywhere from a 2 to 5 point win for Donald Trump. And if we come back up to Michigan with 15 electoral votes, Michigan's just like Georgia. Whoever wins this state, I personally believe, is in great shape to win the election. You can see Donald Trump was in the favor to win, but now Harris has took that lead by 2 points. But if you really look closely, the Rust Belt, usually Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, usually vote very alike in every single election. They're, not really that far off. You can see that Harris only has 2 polls by Bloomberg, which I personally believe is biased, because how the hell is she going to win by 12 points? I just don't think that's no way. I think this poll is very, very much of an outlier. So if you go down here, you can see in the most latest poll, Trump is tied with Harris. But again, if you take all the other polls into account, it does show Donald Trump up by anywhere from 2 to 3 points. Now, if we factor in, the Bloomberg poll, which I will, and all the tied polls, I definitely think it will go more like Pennsylvania, maybe less than a point, all the way to 2-point win for Donald Trump. And if we come over to Wisconsin, even though it has 10 electoral votes, still a very important state. You can see Harris is almost up by, or she's up by a little over than 1.5 points. If you come down to the latest election, you can see here's that Bloomberg poll, which is interesting because it does show Donald Trump losing by Harris by 2 points. But if you factor in Kennedy, she takes a lot of the more of Harris's supporters away, making Donald Trump the winner. So that is very interesting. The latest poll that came out does show Harris up by 2. Donald Trump won the state in 2016 by pretty decent margins, and he barely lost it by less than a point in 2020, even with Joe Biden's big year. So I definitely think this state is trending a lot to the right, as we can tell. But again, we're going to have to wait on more polling to come out of the state, because this state is just going back and forth. It's even. Harris is up 1, then Trump's up 1. So again, I'm not really sure with the polling in this state who's going to win, but I'm just going to base it off, Michigan and Pennsylvania, since these states usually vote just alike. We'll give it to Donald Trump by a tilt margin. And if we come over to Minnesota, Minnesota was in play just like Virginia is in New Mexico, I personally believe, when Joe Biden was president. But ever since Harris became the nominee and got her big boost, you can see the polling is starting to go back to Harris. Now, even in 2020, Joe Biden didn't win this state by 10 points, I believe. I think it was like 8 points. But I don't believe, Harris is going to win by 10. I think they must have oversampled Democrats in this poll, but I definitely believe these polls down here, especially Fox News and the Telegraph, Harris is only up by 3 or 6 points. That is more likely. Again, we're going to have to watch her boost. I personally believe it's going to go down towards the election. Minnesota could become in play once again. A Republican has not won this state since like 1970s, I believe. So we'll have to see how close Donald Trump actually comes to winning this state. But again, we're going to give it to Harris by just a likely lean margin. And if we come across all the way to the West Coast, Oregon, remember when I was talking about earlier in this video how I did see a new poll come out in Oregon? Well, voila, here you go. Harris is only up by 5 points. Now, in the previous 2 elections, both Democrat Hillary and Joe won Oregon by over 10 points. It was a safe Democrat state, especially the Portland area is very Democratic. But as you can see in the most recent polls, Trump is only down by 5, making this state maybe possibly a swing state this election. We'll have to keep a close eye on it. But again, we're going to just fill in the poll, making Oregon more of a likely lean for the Democrats now. And if you come over to Nevada with its 6 electoral votes, you can see, even though the state voted blue in the past elections, you can see Donald Trump is up more in the polling, making him completely flip the state of Nevada. I definitely think with all the pollings that's coming out, I think Trump will win the state more than 1 point, anywhere from probably, if you factor in all the other polls, anywhere from 2 to 4 points, just like Georgia and North Carolina, making it a likely lean for Donald Trump. And if we come down to Arizona, this is another critical battleground state. You can see Donald Trump is up by almost just less than 2 points. And with all the polling, especially since I do believe Bloomberg is a little biased, But again, I'm not gonna like claim that. I'm just gonna factor in all the other polls. Even with the Democratic poll does show Trump up by 2 points. This poll shows him up by 5 points. So I definitely think it's gonna vote just like Nevada, anywhere from 2 to 5 points for Donald Trump. And if we come down to our last state, New Mexico, again, I think this will be another critical battleground state. As you can see, there are no polls for Harris, so we're going to have to see what the polls look like when they come out. But again, you can see Biden's lead was shortening before he dropped out, was starting to shorten in the state of New Mexico, making Trump starting to gain in the state of New Mexico. A lot of Hispanic voters in this state are starting to lean towards the right. But just since the polls show it right now, I will give the state more of a tilt, maybe 1 to 2 point win for the Democrats. And if we come up to our districts, we can see in Nebraska's 2nd district, Donald Trump did win this district in 2016. But again, just since it's really heavy college educated and they usually tend to vote to the left, I will give it to Harris just by anywhere from 3 to 4 points, possibly. And if we come over to Maine, since this is one of the most trending left states in the country, I will give the overall vote towards Kamala Harris. I did see a poll where she was up by 9 or 10 points, so I won't make it safe, but I will make it likely Democrat. But as you can see, this is what the polling looks like as of today. Trump will win in a landslide with the 325 electoral votes, beating Kamala Harris with 213 electoral votes. Trump is starting to make pushes in like states like Virginia, more in the Rust Belt, even New Mexico, but Harris is hanging on to states like Minnesota, and even Oregon is starting to go a little under the radar, so we're going to have to keep an eye on all these polls. But again, Trump wins in a landslide, making him the winner of the Electoral College.